So I'm not going to use notes for this one. I don't really need notes for this video. I want to talk about, because it's always been this subject so much lately, it just pops up in my feed more than ever. Even older videos, people talking about it from years ago. But it's being talked about more than ever. I think it's good that there's a lot of people that explore. But there is stuff in my own experience that which I want to bring to the table that I can't just say is everything that is and will be and is. So what I want to talk about in this video is basically the light, the engulfing light that takes people, falsified light after this life, everything that goes with that, and the experience that comes with it, and if you reject it. And this is all my own inner visions over time. This is not my near-death experience. I've never had a near-death experience because I look in the mirror and I'm one of those people that's like, I probably wouldn't make it. So for starters, I have a lot of visions of being engulfed by the light and seeing, like, divine being in a white robe with blonde hair. They don't have the whole beard, but they do look like the closest thing, and they can have the beard, but in a lot of visions I see that they don't. And there's a lot to this, honestly. There's a part of me that feels like this is almost a humbling, experience. But to a lot of people, it's a trap, it's a trick, it's gonna get you. But there's certain things that come with that, because like the ones in charge of this, even if they're flooded with reptilian DNA, they're the ones that are in charge of the gates of Earth, in a sense, in a celestial sense. So where am I going to with this? In the visions I see, a lot of them, I obviously have some kind of genophiliac type of, sexual desire to magically become the opposite sex. I've had this since I was a child, but yet I'm a guy. I'm more of a guy than some guys. And anyways, with the experience, there's a lot of visions of me seeing myself being turned into like a person, another person, usually in another country, in a different tongue and everything. And it does kind of go with the story of like the Tower of Babel and whatnot, where like people were, just suddenly taken from that, and their tongue was changed and whatnot. It kind of almost goes with that. I'm not going to say that's exactly it, because that's just all biblical, King James context and whatnot. But what I'm going to go to with this is like there's vision. So I see myself, there's a lot of lives in Asia, a lot of lives in India. There are some where become the ultimate American Jezebel kind of girl, and yeah, that's just me. I know somebody watching is like, dear God, what is wrong with this guy? Well, honestly, it's, again, this is the type of stuff, and I say like I'm engulfed by like this light, like, and like you become somebody else, and yeah, most of them I see, like, you're erased. Memories are erased, except the Jezebel life. That was one where I'm just like tossed around as somebody's, girl. But anyways, I don't want to get too personal on some of these visions. Obviously, I can't. And then there's so much that goes with that. I want to make a whole separate video on the genophilia, sexual nature stuff and whatnot. Because that is a part. That's part of the reason in the formula and everything, the riddle to me for why something is inside of me has been inside of me since early 2012. I have a book on that, Journey of a Celestial Dream, if anybody wants to check that out. But back to the light, engulfed by the light. Yeah, there's a lot of visions where that happens, and you don't come back the same. You never come back. You don't come back knowing yourself. You might know that you were once somebody else, but you don't come back as yourself. And so I go with that, in a lot of visions. Obviously it doesn't, give me the whole details of the whole entire life, but in a lot of visions, I see, just basically this being, this white-robed, yellow-haired, blonde-haired, blinding-haired being that engulfs me in light, and blinding light, and turns me into another person, maybe a baby. But also I think they have the powers to just give somebody a whole, like, walk-in conscious transfer kind of deal. And there are different figures. There's a child in a white bathrobe kind of I say it's a bathrobe. It looks, maybe it's something more like a Hindu looking kind of white robe, but they're like bald, or they have like a towel wrapped around their head, and they have the little magic scepter, and then they turn me into a woman, and that's on into another life and everything. Yes, there's a lot of stuff, but it always has to do with like the light, the blinding light. And so there's a lot of things that go with that, and I think most people do go with that because it's this almost humbling answer. So what happened to the visions where I deny the light and turn away from it? Well, there's one of two things that happen. And I will tell you now, you will never come back human, because like I said, these whatever, even if they're engulfed in reptilian DNA, they're the gatekeepers of this earth and the celestial realm, within celestial sense realm, whatever, you know what I'm saying. They're the gatekeepers in that sense. They are. And you know, in those, and even if that is them, or if there's something greater than that that comes out of the sun, like it has also suggested, that's still a part of the gatekeeper of this realm, this reality. So you deny them. There's one where they open an absolute pit of hornets and flames and rock and sulfur and metal all out of your head, and it's awful, and it's, I mean, you want to scream but you can't scream, and it's just like, yeah, hornets and roaches flying out of your head. Obviously it's a generated head, and you basically go into the fire realm, suffer. But it's like all things in this universe, it's temporary. It's hell, basically. I know people say this realm is hell. Well, yes, in a certain way, but in my visions, it seems like there is like a fiery pit of hell, and like they throw you around in like metal skeletons and whatnot, steel skeletons while you're in. Yeah, it's pretty bad, in just pits of flame, and there's these black cloak hooded figures reading out verses from I don't know where, because I don't know if it's in biblical, like Christian biblical context, or if it's Gnostic context, because they might actually end up secretly following that more than just the or they might have their own kind of like hidden esoteric, you know, philosophy that they're reading verses off of, something like that. But they're reading verses off a stone, and it reads it as, you know, so if you masturbate every day and it just like keeps slamming your hand, this is all while in pits of hell, and you're nuts, and reading out like some verse. So yeah, there's stuff like that, and there's this whole thing. I can make a whole another long video about, you know, talking about the fiery pits. It looks like they start with like holding the torch, and like he drops it, and it, you know, just like opens up the fiery pits of hell underneath you, and you go. So that's one thing that could happen, denying the light, and it's all simulation. You know, obviously in biblical context, Jesus spent days in hell, you know, or some people say it was death, but you know, let's just see it like the biblical context for a minute here. And it was in a fiery pit that was generated, some kind of simulator that was generated to make them feel like they went to hell. So the other thing that happens when in the visions I see when you deny the light are basically you are pushed away from this earth, never to return again. If you deny the light, you are told that you will walk into another conscious sentient race of sorts, but they won't be human. You will never be human again, and they will sit there and roll the dice, while rolling the dice and making you fly 10 million miles an hour, 10 million light years an hour to the south, to the west, to the east, whatever, and you'll become another race. Some come in this image, some don't. You know, and a lot of visions I see, you know, they basically look at me in the light and say, this is the new like keeper of the light now, is a gigantic tentacled, mechanicalized, plasma-based life form that feeds on stars, and they're like, you're becoming one of them, and then I'm engulfed in as some kind of sentient creature that has to feed on stars and is plasma-based and mechanicalized, kind of like the way we're made out of like flesh and bones, and they're burning at an extremely hot temperature, but you'd never feel it because you're one of them. You grew into it. And I don't know how a race like that works. Obviously, I've tried to talk about stuff like that before with like my DMT experience, but that is like the closest thing to that. And then there's, you know, other life forms out there in the universe that you become. There's other gateways too, so that's why I don't think like everything is all about being engulfed by a falsified light. There's other gateways, and I think though, like a lot of them, the main master, the true masters, uh, you know, they deny the light. So I noticed that in a lot of like going with Gate, this powerful celestial astral bodied being or something like that. This blue, shining blue, comes out of the sun. I don't know who it is, but I always went with the name Gate. Like he's also a gatekeeper almost, but he's his own gate. But yeah, that was the one that was like throwing me around a lot, and in like different lives. But the thing is, you can never come back to this earth, this reality. You can never be born here again, and to some degree, I mean, I can understand that being kind of sad almost. You never get to see the fate of the earth, and I know most people out there will be like, I don't want to see the fate of the earth. Well, okay, well, I think it's kind of sad that almost you get to skip thousands of years, or I mean, I'm saying you disappear from thousands of years of this reality and this earth, and just never to see it again. And like I said, there's so many races out there, different realities, different life forms that live in a world close enough to this, comfortably like this, but they're just a different race. There's also simulated realities where you could also fall into that, where it's a simulation of this world. But I talk about this with a lot of stuff where the possibility of like all this like stuff I saw early on, like these civilizations I wanted to go to, they seem like these real nice, almost socialist kind of like places, but they're real colorful and animated. And yeah, but that was all just simulation, and you're still in another reality. You're still in another place as something else, but you're just seeing a simulation of this world. So yeah, there's possibilities of stuff like that out there, and so that's really my main point with like that I wanted to add to the table of light. But that's all just my own inner visions. That doesn't mean that is everything it is and will be. But yeah, so and like I said, yeah, a humbling answer it could be, but there's a good chance that it's not really the same as what people have always suspected it to be. And at this point, sorry, I just saw like the male person walk up for a split second, so I kind of got stalled a little bit. Yeah, the light is its own thing at the end of the day, and it's it's a trap, it's a trick. Will it be okay if you come back and go into it and come back to Earth? Will you find a way? Some people make it sound like there's no hope. You'll be stuck here forever, but there is no forever, because obviously humans hadn't been here forever. So it's just something to think about, and that's all I wanted to add to the table today. So thank you if you got this far.